Hello. So glad you're here. So glad you're joining me again. I'm so excited to be sharing with you today. My name is Piper Merrill. I'm a pediatric nurse practitioner. I've got 30 years experience in pediatrics. I've actually been a nurse practitioner for 20 years. And I just always like to kind of start off with letting you know kind of what my background is, why my passion is mental and emotional health. That is what we'll be talking about, and I'll be sharing a lot of my own life experiences from, we'll say 5 decades of life and experience in medicine. I'm a certified life coach. I have this kind of fun. I did medical missions for probably 10 to 15 years and been in 30 countries. So I love that because I've seen other cultures, spent time in other cultures, and I think that makes... just helps round us out as individuals and people. So I just want to kind of review a little bit. What we talked about last time was, mental and emotional health. What is that? Why is that important? I think we all know, in my opinion, we're kind of at a 911 when it comes to behavioral health. And behavioral health is what is really the combination of our thoughts, mental, and our emotions, right? Our feelings, that then we act on it, which leads to our behavior. Behavioral health, as we know, behavior is quite complex. There's why people act the way they act, why we do what we do has been a conundrum for many, many centuries, I would say. So I'm going to cover in the population I'm primarily speaking to is probably 70 to 80% of the population. I always like to say there are outliers. There are personality disorders. There's intellectual disabilities that prevent a child from really developing to the full potential that we want them to. So I never want judgment or guilt for a parent that has had a child that suffers from mental illness. We have good friends that have struggled with that with their children that have committed suicide. And I think we've all had friends so there's so many variables to how a person thinks and how a person acts and their reaction to life events. So through all my podcasts, I only want you to ever hear is there's hope. There's always room to grow and learn. And if you're a parent, you think, oh my gosh, I've screwed this up. Like, how do I even start over? My kids are in their 30s and 40s. There again, there's hope for that, right? We just start from the day that we learn something different. That's called learning. That's called growing, right? And you know what? Forbes magazine said several years ago that a lot of people are most productive in their 60s, 50s, and 60s. And I think, and I would add to that, is if they've taken the time to do the soul work that we all need to do. We need to think about, and that's what we're going to talk about today, is what goes into behavior. Kids a lot of times will learn their mental and emotional health and how they react to life, react to situations, react to others. It is modeled by our parents and by our home environment. That is a big influence, is that everything? No. Social plays into it. Our society plays into it. Friends, all that plays into where we learn how to think in life, right? And so one of the powerful dynamics that I did say, the home environment is so important. I think we all know that. I think we can all, and I do tell my patients to look back at how they grew up. What did you love about the teaching that you learned? What didn't you like? Because we can learn from both. I would like to do this differently, or I would like to do this the same, because there's positive and negatives. But, unfortunately, I don't know what that is about human behavior, but we do tend to sometimes focus on what didn't work instead of what did work. So it's very important when you look back through your childhood, even if you had some very traumatic situations, that we do look back and say, you know what? They did do this right. They did do this well. And I want to repeat that. Even if I don't like the other things that they did, let's take the good with the bad. Let's not just focus on the negative. And parents, I can tell you, you've done a lot right. You've done a lot right. Is Johnny perfect? No. Is Sally going to be perfect? No. I think we would all like everybody to be perfect. But that's kind of a selfish thing, because if you just get your act together, it will make me happy, right? That's how we all feel. It's the honest truth, right? I work with people and I think, gosh, if you would just learn how to communicate with me better, how I need to hear your message, how I need to receive you, I just think that would be great and my world would be happier, right? But unfortunately, others aren't going to change to fix our world, right? That's such a hard revelation. But the younger we get that revelation, you know what? I have to change. And not only I have to change, I get to change. And that's what I'm hoping to share with you and to help you, is to realize, you know what? It doesn't matter what background you grew up in, what family environment you grew up in. I know I work with foster kids. That's a very challenging situation to be in. But if you're a foster child, you know what? That may have defined your first 18 years of life. But you now have a choice as an adult to reframe what happened to you and to choose to think differently so that you can then feel differently and then act differently. Did I say it's easy? No, it's not easy. Mental and emotional health, just like physical health, right? It's not easy to be healthy. In life coaching, we say choose your hard. It's hard to be unhealthy. It's hard to be healthy. I'd rather work hard at being healthy. So I'm going to make myself get up in the morning. I'm going to get a routine so that I can go exercise in the morning. I'm going to eat right. I'm going to learn to do some supplements if I don't think my food is of the best nutrition. So to be physically healthy, we kind of have learned that in life. And I think medicine has done well, Western medicine, in teaching kids and people cardiac health. When I ask a child in my practice during well exams, I'll question them a lot because I want to hear how they process and what they're thinking about. And so I'll say, are you healthy? And they say, yes. And I say, how do you know that? Well, I eat right and I exercise. Okay, well, that's physical health. But what about mentally and emotionally? How do you know if you're mentally and emotionally healthy? And so I dive into that with them. And I think it's very important. Parents, I think it's so important for you to know the makeup of your child. What makes them tick? What makes them unique? What's their strengths? What their weaknesses? And so one of the models that I have really used, because I just have found it very valuable, is Dr. Kokosis. And he loves me, so he'll forgive me if I mispronounce his name. Dr. John Kokosis. He's really taking a behavioral model called the temperament model, and it's referred to as the DISC. And he, over several decades, started applying this in his clinical practice and also in the business setting. So temperament is just what makes a person unique. What are we, if you've had two children, they come out very different, right? They have their strengths, they have their weaknesses. This one cried a lot. This one didn't cry a lot. This one doesn't take much to make him happy. This one, oh my gosh, if I say anything, he cries, right? So they're just different. What creates that, right? So that's why I would really, because we're talking about what helps a parent and a child connect. If that relationship is so valuable and so important on the development of your child's health, right? And I would go as far as saying physical health, right? Because we know, and I'll show this through Caroline Leaf, her research is that our physical health, 87% of physical illness comes from our thoughts and our emotions. Right. 87% of physical illness comes from our thoughts and our emotions. Now, we can look at that in two ways. That frustrates me, that makes me angry, or that gives me control. And I think sometimes we get mad. I can tell you, if a parent comes in or a child, 16-year-old, 17-year-old, someone old enough to understand this, and they tell me they have headaches or they have stomach problems, I am first going to rule out the physical. I definitely am going to go there. However, at the end, I am going to say, so tell me, any new stressors in your life, any new events in your life? for young kids, any new siblings in the home, anything going on, any change in school, change in, something else. So something that's a stressor could explain the headaches, could explain their stomach aches. There again, it's going to depend on the temperament of the child, how they interact with life, others, how they interpret their surroundings. And so, parents, I'm really advocating for you to read these books and understand the temperament of yourself, right? First, understanding yourself. What makes me tick? What makes me happy? What makes me sad? Because that's going to impact how you communicate with your kids, right? Do I communicate in a softer voice because Sally's a little sensitive? And I know that. And that's not something I want to change in her necessarily. It's just who she is. And so I'm going to adjust my behavior and my thinking and my emotions so that I can communicate with Sally the way she needs to be communicated with, right? Or it's also going to set my expectations on what I expect of her, knowing and getting to know how she is. So let me give a brief overview of the temperament model, and I'm probably going to read some of this to you simply so that you get the full gist. I research this stuff. I love to study. I love to read. And so I want you to get the full impact of it. Dr. Kokosis has he's a clinical psychologist, meaning some psychologists do research information. Others practice in the clinical setting where they have patients. So there's 4 temperaments. There's choleric, there's sanguine, phlegmatic, and melancholy. It's not a personality test. So temperament's very different. Temperament is what our natural gifting is. They're more specific. Personality is made up of several different variables, and temperament is just one of them. So here, let me just show you some of these temperament characteristics. So let's say for the sanguine, they're impulsive, influential, impressionable, enthusiastic, emotional, energetic, charming. They need to talk. They like to play. They like to win. They're sociable. They're trusting. And then on the other hand, the melancholy. So conscientious, cautious, competent, compliant, critical, systematic, accurate, needs facts, logic, needs time to think. So, and then for phlegmatic, patient, passive, predictable, possessive, procrastinates, tolerant, loyal, needs routine. Choleric, they're very direct, they're very daring, they're very decisive, demanding, domineering. There's a lot of D's, aren't they? They're doers, they're confident, they like to achieve. They're problem solvers, they're risk takers. So can't you see how if you understood this about yourself and your children, how you would know, oh, Sally, I need to communicate in this way with Sally. My directness might come off to her as offensive or insensitive, right? And then there's other people that say, well, that's just how I communicate. And to be honest, I think that's a cop-out. That's a cop-out because it is important how people receive us because life's all about relationships. So maybe your children don't have a lot of say in, well, I need you to communicate a different way with me, Dad. I need you to communicate Mother, I need you to communicate in a different way. We can feel like, well, I'm the parent. I'm just going to tell you how this is. Well, I get that. However, if your goal is to produce a healthy child, a healthy young adult that can be productive in the world, you're going to care about your direct communication. You're going to care about, wow, when I just go off on their behavior, how that affects them. What message am I giving them? Because they are going to carry that into adult life. Now, on the other hand, like I said, that is your temperament. So there again, you're teaching Johnny not just how you need to adjust to his temperament or her temperament. You're teaching them, you know what, Sally, you're going to work with someone who is a talker, sanguine. Now you're phlegmatic and you don't really, maybe you're a little more introverted and you don't really want to talk a lot. And so how do you adjust to working with someone like that? Hopefully you feel like You want them into romantic relationships. You want them into other relationships, into marriages. If we don't teach them how to adjust to other people's behavior, and the reason we adjust, right? Let's go back. Why do I need to adjust? Because the fruit of that relationship. I want my relationship to be the best it can be, in the quality of, I want high quality in all my relationships. Are they going to be perfect? No, because of these differences. But we can look at the differences as, I don't like that, and I'm running, and I'm just going to hang out with people that are all sanguines, and we get each other. Well, you're going to stay kind of stunted in your growth if you choose to do that. So I want to become and reach my full potential. And I'll be honest, right now, I can be in some relationships that challenge me, that I just don't think the way they think. And in some ways, I can just say, I don't really need that person in my life, do I? Like, how important is that? But I'm maturing, thank you, and realizing, wait, maybe they can grow a new aspect in me that I say, you know what? I read something this morning I thought was really good. See if I can remember it. But fear is about us. Love is about others. So when I want to run from that communication, that relationship with that person, what am I fearing? I started asking myself, what am I fearing that they're bringing out in me that maybe I don't want to address? Could it be that? Could I look at it from, wow, I love them enough to assume the best. I think she really means well. I think she really cares about people, but she's reacting to something either in me or in herself, and it's causing our communication to not be good. But if I choose to stay in the relationship, I will learn. And you know what? Usually they're going to learn too. It's our choice whether we learn from others or not. We could just say, that's just who I am, and that's just, I'm going to do my own thing. But I don't think that's really what we want to teach our children, right? I think we want to teach them that we can grow and adjust. And when something does unsettle us about a relationship, we can evaluate it and look and say, I wonder what that's triggering in me. There again, I always want to say there's a difference in judgment and evaluation. Judgment is an opinion. It's not fact. It's an opinion. It's an opinion. Whereas evaluation is it just is. I'm evaluating objectively. So evaluating doesn't put a judgment, good or bad, on it. It just is, right? And so I think it's important many times. I think that's why we don't want to look at our behavior sometimes, because we turn toward judgment. I'm saying my behavior is good or bad. No. You're just staying curious about your behavior. I wonder why when I went to that party, I immediately walked into the room and said, they don't think I belong here. They don't want me here. Where's that coming from? It's coming from our self-talk, right? Where's that message coming from? Probably from my upbringing, something happened to me. I interpreted that event a certain way that made me feel like others don't accept me. And so now when I go to a party, I project that onto everybody else. But here's why that's important. Now I'm reacting to that projection. I'm not reacting to or acting based on what they really think or feel about me. They don't know me, right? I just walked into a strange environment, but already I'm assessing that environment and saying they don't think I belong here. So what I had to do, because this was me, is to when I left the place to say, what were you thinking that made you react? Well, I didn't feel like I belonged in that environment. I grew up in a middle-class home. We had all we needed, but we didn't have a lot of money. I think we had plenty. My dad worked very hard, and I'm very proud of him for going back to college in his late 30s, 40s, and so he could provide for his family. And we had everything we needed, but I didn't come from a wealthy home. So to walk into an atmosphere that was full of what I considered wealthy. Here's what I learned, though, and I think this is why this is important as well. What we see is not always what it is, right? So judging that environment is what I did. I walked in and said, oh, they're dressed in the nines, man. They're driving these cars that are amazing. They're in these houses that, oh my gosh, I could fit 2 of mine in there. But I don't know their bank account. I don't know really what they're bringing in. Are they truly wealthy? I would have to look at their bank account. I would have to really look at their finances, right? I'm not doing that. So I'm judging based on appearance, not fact. We've got to teach our kids that, right? Because that's so important, because I can say I don't belong here because I don't have that kind of money. You don't even know what kind of money they have. You're basing it on something that's not true, right? So to allow yourself to then, so once I reflected on that, I thought, you know what? I do fit into this group of people. I'm going to go figure it out. Let me stay curious. Let me go learn from them. Or maybe a positive thing on that is maybe they do have a lot of money. How did they get there? What was their thinking? How did they learn to do business? What have they learned in life? What character have they learned in life? What's their character that has given them the tenacity to grow their business and to be able to have that big house? That big house doesn't make them who they are, but if that's their preference, I'm okay with that, right? So there again, how we see ourselves, right, is so important walking into an environment. I need to understand my thinking, understand my emotions and what's triggering that. So that is what we want to model for kids. And I do think the temperament model is just a great tool, parents, to help you understand Sally and Johnny in this scenario. Another thing that we look at is this is more personality types, an introvert and extrovert. You fit into that category. That's not a temperament. If your child is introverted and extroverted, or if you're an extrovert trying to communicate with an introvert, or you're expecting your child to act like an extrovert, you take them to this new school, you think they're going to be so excited to get into this classroom of all these new kids. Look at the potential here. You're going to have a new teacher. This is going to be so fun. And he's like, oh my gosh, what is all this? That's not who they are. They're an introvert. They don't get their energy from people and their environment. That's what an extrovert is. An extrovert, introversion, extroversion just says, where do I get my energy? Where do I get my energy from? So choleric and sanguine temperaments are considered extroverts. Phlegmatics and melancholy, they're considered more introverts. So, and it's related to how a person gets their energy, how you're refueled. Extroverts are active, process-oriented, expect the environment to provide the satisfaction that they want, right? And that's good or bad, right? Because sometimes the environment doesn't provide what I need, right? How am I going to handle that, right? I need to learn that about myself. Introverts are productive-oriented, and they tend to be more passive, private, and more accommodating. So, and how they adapt to whatever environment they're in, this is going to depend on that temperament. So, yeah, as an introvert parent, I need to learn how to communicate with. So there again, temperament, personality types, these all go into how we present our communication to our kids, and then also how they receive it. Communication, we'll do a whole podcast on communication. We know that what is said is not always what is received. Communication's not only about what is said, it's really about what's heard, the intensity of the words. I think I'm a Christian, so I really felt like the Lord said to me one time, what's driving that intensity? Like when I say some things, I'm so angry. I didn't realize that. But the intensity of my words were so harsh. And I had to stop and think, what is driving the intensity of my words? When I say that to you, why does that come out so harsh? I didn't even know. But when I stopped and processed, this is not a good admission, I'm very angry that you aren't leveling up and that you're not trying to reach your full potential, because I need you to reach your full potential because it helps me reach mine. Well, that's a little selfish, as we all can be, right? But I saw that in a workplace. I think I realized one day my boss is not going to be who I need him to be. Drop the mic. He doesn't have to be who I need him to be. I need to learn what he expects. I need to learn how to meet those expectations if I want to keep the job, right? He doesn't have to communicate in a way that I would like him to. So, but that's where my intensity was coming from. Had I not taken time to stay curious about some of the feedback I get, some of the feedback was, wow, you sound angry. Wow, you sound so harsh. Where's that coming from? I had no idea. No idea. Where is that intensity? Is it fear? Fear can be what drives some of our intensity of our words, right? When we're communicating with our kids. I tell parents all the time, I think we communicate or we parent out of fear. Fear where that behavior is going to take them. Fear of how that thinking process that they're communicating to me is going to take them. So I react instead of respond. So I cut Johnny off when he starts to tell me that. Or I say to Sally, you are not wearing that out. Well, I just kind of probably communicated, you don't look good in that outfit. When actually, oh my gosh, you look amazing in an outfit, and I don't want boys looking at you like that. So can you see where that's important? My words, what's driving my words? And this comes back to parents. Parenting is not easy. It's not easy because communication, relationships, how you grew up, the messages you spoke to yourself now are getting passed down to your generation. But can you see how this all gets passed down generation to generation? Unless you say, you know what? I'm not passing down my negative impaction. I guess, my negative messages that I spoke to myself, my negative behaviors. Here's reality. You are going to pass some of that down. So I tell parents many times, to be honest, just save for your child's counselor, save for their therapist, not their college. I'm just kidding. But true, right? You're not going to be the perfect parent, and you got to give yourself grace. There's grace in that. But there again, in that grace, you're teaching that child, you know what? Sally, Johnny, you're not going to be perfect either. You're not going to be perfect. You're not going to always respond in the best way. You're going to sometimes react to that other person, and you're not going to like that reaction. And then when you leave, you're going to feel a little guilty. So what you do, guilt is a little bit of a wasted emotion if it just makes you sick to your stomach. A little bit of guilt goes, you know what? I probably could have done that better. I probably could have reacted in a healthier way. So let me examine it. Let me look at the words that I chose. Let me look at the intensity of what it was. And then here's where it takes courage. This is where I tell parents also in their relationships. I see patients being in pediatrics from when the babies are 3 days old, and I absolutely love my babies. And I love my parents coming in, and this there again should be in a utopia. We think, oh my gosh, I have a new baby. This is so exciting. It's not always. It's hard. You've got a mom who's just had a baby. That's huge, guys. We don't even really comprehend what the body has gone through with that. The hormones, you're not sleeping. Dad really wants to participate. Dad really wants to help mom and help little Sally, but he doesn't know how to do it. It's like, oh my gosh, what's going on? They're just crying all the time. What do I do? I can't feed them. You're breastfeeding. That doesn't come natural. Can you see the complexity of having a new baby? That's hard. But I tell parents, you know what? A lot of grace during this time. It's so important what you speak, the words you speak to each other. Johnny's really not going to remember this time. He's going to, as the pediatric provider, pediatrician, a provider, we're going to take care of Sally. We're going to take care of Johnny. These babies are going to be fine. We're going to make sure they get enough to eat. We're going to make sure that they're growing, they're developing. But the greatest gift you can give this child is learning to support each other as parents, keeping your relationship healthy right now. That's not easy. That's not easy. But this is what the volume you communicate with each other, the environment. I have in other practices that I've worked in many practices. So if you're a patient of mine, I could be talking about someone else. But I have two parents that are very intense. They both come from very intense cultures and very type A cultures. And they have a baby and they bring to me all the time. And they say, she's so bad. And I'm like, oh, be careful. Don't say that. She's not bad. What is the behavior that's frustrating you and making her seem bad, right? That's your judgment. That's not an evaluation. No, she cries all the time. I can't comfort her. I don't know how to make her happy. I just want her to be happy, right? That's what we want for all our kids, right? I want them to be happy. Well, she's a baby. She's only 2 months old now. All she knows how do they communicate? They cry, right? So we project onto the baby, you're crying because you're hurting. They're not always hurting. They're just communicating, right? I'm 2 months old. What else do? I eat, sleep, poop, pee, cry. You know what I mean? But so it's important for you to kind of examine. I told both these parents, Johnny's just going to cry sometimes. He's just going to cry. That's what he does. So let's try to soothe him. You do the things physically. Let's feed him. Let's, make sure his diaper's changed. Let's, make sure he's getting adequate nutrition. Let's do all the things physically, right? But then we got to attune to his emotions and to the makeup of the child, right? And the intensity, of these parents, though, I said, you're creating it. I wonder, I never judge. I try not to. I wonder if the intensity of your behavior, you can't fix it, is creating some of the anxiety of the baby, is creating not a peaceful environment, right? So there again, knowing your temperament, looking at your, what's driving you to have to fix it all? Why does it need to be perfect right now? It's not going to be perfect. Your home environment, your child is not going to be perfect. You're not going to be perfect. A lot of grace. So I think that's important. Okay, well, that was part one of various things that affect our behavior and how our behavior affects our children. And then next week, we're going to dive into part two of that. I look forward to you joining us.